So a lot of the criticisms that Damn seems to face is how commercial the sound of the album is. And especially coming from To Pimp a Butterfly, which I think is Kendrick's peak sound, as in, I don't think Kendrick is going to find another sound throughout his discography, throughout his career, that better defines him more than the jazzy funk sounds of To Pimp a Butterfly. Kind of how like Freddie Gibbs will never sound better than he does with Madlib beats. I just think that is going to be his peak sound. Coming into a record like Damn, you definitely noticed a huge steps into a more commercial sound. But while it's definitely a huge commercial step compared to his previous release, with every commercial moment here, Kendrick truly puts his own flavor into whatever sound he's sort of digging at. And while it can be a commercial sound, everything still sounds like Kendrick. Everything still sounds authentic here, and just because Damn relies on a much more commercial route, I don't think that necessarily has to drown the quality of the project. There's still a lot of great moments here on Damn, even 2 years later. So with the hit records, it's probably a good place to start. And DNA has no hook, has an incredible beat switch, and I feel like Kendrick always makes a good song whenever there's a beat switch on it. And I love the two flows that he picked. They're very different, and I kind of go back and forth which flow I liked more, but I feel like I like the first one just a little bit more just because he rode the beat a little bit better. And besides a little bit of the buildup in the beat being a little bit off with the mixing and the buildup of the first instrumental, this really is just a perfect way to start off the album. A lot of energy, and even 2 years later, it's still a great fucking opener. So Kendrick definitely goes in a much more commercial route with Loyalty, with the Rihanna feature. But again, this is another example of how just because it's commercial, it doesn't really seem like the quality goes down. Rihanna absolutely stole the show. She was rapping on here and it sounded extremely well. I was pleasantly surprised. And the way that the background vocals are kind of put together with synthesizer to start up the beat is just incredible. I love the very deep voice hook, and overall it's a great song. Kendrick does struggle a little bit lyrically and with his delivery, but even when Kendrick doesn't really seem to steal the show, he always makes up for it because he's a very great artist. He knows exactly what to put around him, and everything here still sounds good. The subject matter's still there. Everything around Kendrick, every instrumental, every feature really seems to be put in a well place. What separates Kendrick from a lot of other rappers is that when it comes to making albums, he seems so much farther ahead than everybody else. So even here in Damn, probably his most commercial release, everything is still delicate, and he's able to place everything around him correctly to the point where even if he seems to struggle in the track, it's still overall a good song just because Kendrick is just a great songwriter. He puts together different aspects of the track to make it sound good, even if he himself seems to sort of struggle in these tracks just a little bit. Same thing with Love. I personally love the beat, and I think it's very beautifully crafted, and Sakari just brings beautiful vocals. Again, Kendrick seems to struggle a little bit. These kind of tracks remind me sort of how Tyler, the Creator, and Frank Ocean and She made a great song together, even if every part of the song didn't fully come together. Frank Ocean just killed it, and it was a great Tyler beat that sort of put the song together, and I feel like that's what Kendrick is sort of doing here. It's not fully all the way there, but it's still a good and enjoyable song for me that just because of how it was put together, it seemed to work. For me, it worked. An Element, you have Kid Capri, ad-libs going on around. Very different types of drums here, like not necessarily super hard hitting. It's not no Apollo Brown type beats, but it's definitely a little bit more soulful, and I feel like the drums hit very nicely here, and the pianos overall are great. These are the types of beats that necessarily on their own, they might not sound like they're really pop here, but what Kendrick does over them really kind of brings them to life for me, and that's just a testament to how great Kendrick's delivery is. And here in Element, he was flowing incredibly, he was spitting bars. I love the line, just say his name and I promise that you'll see Candyman. He was definitely spitting all over this. An Element, there's no hi-hats, there's no bass boots and 808 drums. It really just kind of replaces all that with very soulful snares and drums, Kid Capri ad-libs, and Kendrick just flowing in his flow that it's just at this point completely established. It's really just showing that Kendrick has the freedom to go any direction he wants, and it's still gonna have that commercial support with it. Element was huge, and it still doesn't seem like Kendrick is really giving up anything in quality because the material here is still great. Humble definitely has heavier trap elements with Kendrick's flow, but I still think he pulled it off pretty well. Looking back on it, it was definitely the good move label-wise to have the hit song and have the lead single be Humble with how great it did. But looking back on it, it really just kind of seems like a banger track that doesn't really show you what Damn is capable of. Now that kind of wraps it up for all of the very hit records that are in the album. And for the rest of the tracks, you are getting some of Kendrick's most heartfelt moments, most vivid subject matter, and impressive storytelling. The impressive storytelling obviously shows up in Duckworth. Kendrick tells his crazy story of how Top Dog was robbing Kendrick's dad at some point, and thankfully nothing really came out of the situation, but it could have very easily gone different. And like he says, Kendrick might have grown up without a father, without his manager, who's been a huge help in Kendrick's career, especially with TDE. And you truly just can't help but think of how much better Kendrick just seems to get with his storytelling throughout each album. And it's just truly impressive to see how many more crazy stories like these can we get. After Good Kid, Mad City, his level of storytelling is just reaching new depths here. Fear is another extremely important track. Some people think that Kendrick is a little bit too preaching to Pimp a Butterfly. The fact that Kendrick does address all these topics and is always trying to tell you something can come off as preaching to some people, but I can't really see how Kendrick can be too preachy, because even though he's trying to tell you something all the time, it's not always trying to change you or trying to change the way you think. Sometimes he's just literally trying to vent towards the listener. And in The Blacker the Berry, he ends the song by saying, "So why would I weep when Trayvon Martin was killed in the street? When gangbanging made me kill a brother blacker than me?" Hypocrite. And he shows you that I'm not a perfect human being. There's some hypocrisy to me. There are some problems that I'm still going through. And I feel like he's not afraid to expose either with him or the people around him if he sees problems. And that's what he does here in Fear. In Fear, he does an extremely well job of not only mentioning the problems that his community is going through, but mentioning also what the community itself isn't doing correctly, which then themselves can improve. It's not just outside factors, it's inner factors that affect his environment as well. He mentions how there's police brutality still going on, which is a big theme throughout his album and throughout all of Kendrick's music. But he also mentions how some of the parenting that he sees around him, like in Fear, how he says, "I'll beat your ass if I beat your ass twice and you still here." That sort of parenting, I don't know if Kendrick's necessarily trying to shape it to seem like it's the best way to move forward. And I feel like when Kendrick is both addressing his community's problems, but also trying to find what's wrong within himself and others that he sees around him, I don't really see how Kendrick can be too preachy. Fear really just shows the versatility within Kendrick's subject matter. And yeah, I actually wish Kendrick would have embraced his commercial sound a little bit more. I feel like SZA would have sounded really nice over this instrumental because it sounds very similar to the Doves in the Wind beat from her most recent LP. And I think it really just shows that Kendrick can open up doors to more commercial sound and not drop that great quality that he seems to always deliver to us. And some people don't really like the hook here and the beat, but I really just find it really enticing. Again, really simple, but Kendrick just, again, a whole different flow, and his high-pitched voice just always seems to resonate with me, and I think he did it great again. I used to like God. I still don't think it's a terrible track, but just compared to the rest of the tracks, Kendrick's vocal performance is just nowhere close to being as good. His vocals get a little bit annoying, especially towards the hook, and while it's not a terrible song, sonically, it's pretty decent, but definitely a little bit drop off in quality in terms of the rest of the songs. Pride, I fucking love this instrumental. The slow pattern really did it for me. I love Kendrick's vocals all over the track. Another example of how Kendrick changes his delivery multiple times throughout a track and never really sounds awkward or offbeat. And he did this all over To Pimp a Butterfly as well. I think even more to that extent. And his very drawn out delivery really adds to the feeling of hopelessness that Kendrick feels throughout the album. It seems like Kendrick has been addressing important topics his entire career, and seeing where the world is politically and just in general, it just kind of gives you this helplessness that the world will never be to the extent that Kendrick wants to see it. Hence the line, "A perfect world is never perfect, only filled with lies." It really seems that Kendrick is trying to make a change with his music, and when you see what's going on in the world, it kind of seems like his impact, while it's extremely helpful in changing lives, it doesn't really seem to be doing enough, and that's kind of that frustration that Kendrick feels. And Kendrick just seems to continue to pull it within your emotions, and the rest of these tracks, it really doesn't really seem to miss a beat. And Lust is another perfect example of how Kendrick just fulfills so many meanings into his songs. So unless Kendrick really kind of downplays this whole idea of relationships, of course, and love, and how Lust seems to give you some type of pleasure and some type of enjoyment, but it doesn't really feel like it fulfills you into that everlasting goal, which is love. And we fall into the same cycle of just remaining in lust and never reaching that goal of love. And he ties all of this into a more political aspect. He ties it in with the fact that we do the same things and we fall into the same cycles, and we don't really want to reach that fulfilling goal, whatever it may be, or love or anything else. And we keep getting the same result. And he ends the song by saying how we look at the news every day, trying to find something good, trying to find us something that promises us, but it's the same bad result every time. We don't really change. We're just stuck in our ways, and we don't really seem to take a step forward. And it really just seems like Kendrick is just trying to grab the listener and really say, like, we have to do something, we have to keep pushing forward, but you feel that hopelessness in his voice, and the fact that him constantly trying and not seeing the results that he wants, it's really just bringing him down as a person. So Damn definitely strived away from what we saw in Kendrick's first 3 albums, which seems the very strong overarching concepts. Even though there are definitely a lot of concepts in Damn, I don't think that they tie in together as closely as the other albums do. I feel like all these concepts are just separately kind of put together, and in the end it might have one overarching concept, but I don't feel like that's what drives fully the album. This is definitely Kendrick picking into different bags, trying to make a collection more of songs, where the theme kind of takes more of a backseat compared to Pimp a Butterfly especially, or Good Kid, Mad City. That doesn't take away from the quality, and I really feel like that's all that matters in the end. It may draw off some people that Damn isn't as conceptually put together as other Kendrick records, but the quality still seems to sound the same. Even 2 years later, I still think this is one of Kendrick's best albums, and I would honestly say that at this point, I enjoy it more than Section 80. Maybe not as much as Good Kid, Mad City, but it's definitely up there, and I definitely think it's one of Kendrick's best albums. But that's all I have to say. Let me know what you think of Damn. How much do you enjoy it now 2 years later? And yeah, I'll be with y'all soon. Please like, please subscribe, and peace.